So this next activity is called high places and low places. And it says, here is a table that shows elevations of various cities. So I provided us with the definition of elevation. For those of you who don't know, we did mention it in the last video just a little bit. So elevation is the height above or below sea level. And once again, so sea level is like where the oceans are. And so if it's above sea level, that would be a positive number. Below sea level would be a negative number. And so some strong examples of elevation, like mountains, obviously have a really high elevation, and valleys, like the Grand Canyon or something, have a very low elevation, or a negative elevation, because they are technically like lower on the planet than the oceans are. Okay. So, number one, on the list of cities, which city has the second highest elevation? As always, just a reminder, at this point, if you want to look at this table yourself and pause the video so that you can answer these questions independently first and use the video to check your work, I think that would be an awesome idea. Okay, so which has the second highest elevation? So, high would be a positive number, a big number. I can see the biggest number by far is in Denver. Denver's got a lot of mountains, 5,280. And the second biggest would have to be Bethel, Indiana. Which is, and my pencil broke. And that has a height or elevation of 1,211. Looking at the table, we're talking about feet here. Okay. How would you describe the elevation of Coachella, California in relation to sea level? So, look down for Coachella. -22. So, how would we describe it? Well, it's negative. So, looking back at our definition of elevation, we could say it is 22 feet below sea level. We want to take a little note in parentheses. It's negative, right? Okay. How would you describe the elevation of Death Valley, California in relation to sea level? So we look at Death Valley, and that's -282. So once again, a negative number means it's even lower than the oceans themselves are. So it is -282 feet below sea level. So, and maybe that's a valley, right? I mean, it has valley in the name. So once again, valleys are the opposite of mountains. So the Grand Canyon is a valley. So that's why it's so low on sea level. If you were standing on a beach right next to the ocean, what is your elevation? What do you guys think? If elevation is always in relation to sea level, I would say your elevation would be 0 feet. Because you are at the same level as the ocean. So once again, thinking about elevation, that's how many feet above or below sea level you are. So if you're at the ocean, then you are 0 feet above the ocean. You're right there. So your elevation is 0 feet. You're not above or below, you're just on it. How would you describe the elevation of Miami, Florida? So Miami is at sea level. And we can kind of imagine why, just like how Death Valley, we could imagine why it was such a strong negative, because it's got valley in the name, and a valley is a huge dip in landmass. Or if we thought about Colorado, right, when we looked up here, 5,280, we know Colorado's got a bunch of mountains. So of course its elevation is high. So why is Miami got a 0 elevation? It's on the ocean, right? That makes total sense why it's got a 0 sea level. Okay. A city has a higher elevation than Coachella, California. Select all numbers that could represent the city's elevation. Be prepared to explain your reasoning. So once again, we know Coachella is at negative 22. So I'm going to draw like a little vertical number line. And let's say 0 is here. Coachella's down here at negative 22. So 22 feet. So here's sea level 0. And then Coachella's all the way down here. So which ones are higher? Well, I can already tell 0 feet is higher because it's higher up. That's negative. 0 is bigger than negative. Negative 11. Okay. So negative 11, is that up here or down here? So if this is sea level, this would be 1 foot below, negative 1, 2 feet below, 3 feet, 4. Negative 11 would be about here. And that is higher than negative 22. Negative 35. So if this is 11 feet below sea level, this is 22 feet below sea level, negative 35 would be somewhere down here. So that's even lower. That's not higher than negative 22, that's lower. So oftentimes the bigger the number is that with the negative, so like typically we think of 35 as being bigger than 22, but negative is like the opposite. So like the larger the number is for a negative, the smaller it really is, or the lower it really is. So negative 35, no dice. 4 feet is definitely higher. If here's sea level, 4 would be up here. And negative 8, so once again, if I'm at sea level, negative 8 is below sea level, and that would be about here. So all of them except for negative 35 feet would be have a higher elevation than Coachella. Alright, so now for the next activity. I have pulled up the two tables, and they show the elevations of the highest points on land and the lowest points in the ocean. So once again, we're still talking about elevation here. Okay. So, which point in the ocean is the lowest in the world, and what is its elevation? So, let me just get that set up. Which point in the ocean is the lowest? So go ahead and try and answer that yourself. When I'm looking over here, the lowest elevation, so if we think of sea level being 0, the Mariana Trench would be the lowest. Which is at negative 11,033 meters. So that's, if you were floating on top of the ocean, you would have to swim down 11,033 meters to reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So that's deep, deep down. So, really deep. Right, I'll note of that. Okay, which mountain is the highest in the world? So looking at the mountains, that's this top table here. We've got Everest, Kilimanjaro, Denali, and Machu Picchu. And it looks like Mount Everest is the highest. I'm sure a lot of you already knew that. And that has an elevation of 8,848 meters. So super high. Tallest mountain in the world. Highest point you can go on the planet Earth before flying in the air. Okay, so if you plot the elevations of the mountains and trenches on a vertical number line, what would 0 represent? What points would be above 0? And what points would be below 0? So once again, if we're talking about elevation, 0 would represent sea level. Because everything we talk about with elevation is in comparison to being above the oceans or below the oceans. So, what would points above zero represent? The mountains would be above zero, and those are our positive numbers. And conversely, or opposite, trenches would be below zero. Those are our negative numbers. Those are deep, valleys deep in the ocean. So which is farther from sea level, the deepest point in the ocean or the top of the highest mountain in the world? So, once again, let's draw just like a little baby number line. So if here's 0, I know that the highest mountain, Mount Everest, is 8,848 meters above sea level, and the lowest point is the Mariana Trench, and that would be negative 11,033. So which is farther from sea level? The Mariana Trench. Is further from sea level by about 2,000 feet, 2,200 feet, or meters rather. So if sea level 0, you would have to go 11,000 meters down, which is farther away than 8,000 meters up. And real quick, if I wanted to plot these on this graph, this is kind of a cool activity. You can see right here, this is a little key. It says the number 4 on our number line stands for 4,000 meters. So if this is 4, then this would be, it's counting by 2s, 6, 8, 10, and each whole number actually is 1,000. So this is 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, negative 2,000, negative 6,000, negative 8, negative 10. All right, and if I look over at my table, Mount Everest is point C. So here's Mount Everest. It's over here in Asia, and that's about 9,000. So I would put Mount Everest about here, just below 10,000 feet. Kilimanjaro is over in Africa, H, and Kilimanjaro is almost 6,000. So I'll put it just at or a little bit below the 6,000 meters. Denali is E, over here, 6,000, so 100, so, a little bit above Kilimanjaro. And real quick, we'll do just a couple of the negative ones. Mariana Trench is over here in the Pacific Ocean, and that's negative 11,000. So here's sea level, negative 11,000 deep down here. The Puerto Rico Trench, negative 8,600. That would be a little bit below 8,000. Do that there. So, and then if you want to do the rest yourself, you can. And real quick, just our lesson summary here. Positive numbers are numbers that are greater than 0. Negative numbers are numbers that are less than 0. And the meaning of negative numbers changes depending on context. So context is whether we're talking about money, or we're talking about temperature, or we're talking about elevation, right? So when we talk about temperature, then 0 degrees Celsius, the freezing point of water, is what 0 means. And anything that's negative is degrees less than the freezing point. If we talk about elevation, 0 is the sea level, and negative numbers are the points below. And positive numbers are, mountains, or meters or feet above. Okay, so make sure to read this over a little bit closely. Here are your big ideas. Make sure to pause the video now and get those copied down.